And it's an afterthought, they decided to throw it in. So off in the distance, there's another 12 or 13,000 troops marching off in the distance, coming around this way. Hood told Ector's men that regardless of what transpired around them, to hold this hill. He saw the advantage of it on the first day. There was about 700 something men left in Ector's brigade. Ector was already out with an injury from the Atlanta campaign. They were under Colonel Coleman, who had actually gone to the Naval Academy, and the Confederacy never found a ship for him, so he ended up with North Carolina Regiment. He's commanding these men. It's about dark, and a whole division, about 10,000 U.S. troops or so, are down here, and they're starting to come up the hill, and these crazy Texans go charging down the hill to drive them back. And they're outnumbered, badly outnumbered, and they drive the U.S. troops back. And that pretty much stops their movement in this area. So now Hood's satisfied that this is going to anchor the salient point in the left of his line. It's going to go back over across another hill and then on back to the other side of Tyne, where you see the high ground in the distance. There's a road just past Tyne called Saxon, and I'm pretty sure that's where he got some Arkansas troops back there. And then of course this way he's going to go all the way out to just across Franklin Pike. Battery Lane and Harding Place come together at Franklin Pike. That's Peach Orchard Hill, and his line's going to kind of bend back a little bit. So he's got really a shorter line. He's still got most of the men he had on the first day because they hadn't taken that many casualties. In a sense, it's a little bit better line. You've got more men per mile on it, but they're going to come under such severe artillery fire, it's just going to be unnerving. They've stayed up all night trying to build these entrenchments, and their mistake is they built them up too high. Of course, it's dark and they're tired, but this is the crest, and the military crest is a lower point, perhaps 50 feet or more down. The military crest is a point where you can shoot at men coming up. Their problem here is they really can't shoot at men coming up the hill. You'd have to leave your entrenchments and get down there to shoot at anybody. So by sitting up here and waiting, they were only going to have time to get off one shot, and then they're being pounced on. The Tennesseans are at the top, and on the slope, and probably down about where we parked, was a brigade of Floridians, and they were freezing to death. There was a Sergeant Washington Ives who rode home on the 10th, and he said he had never experienced this kind of cold in his life. They're just absolutely miserable. They can't stand this general that commands them, which is General Bate. He's got 3 brigades, the Tennesseans, the Floridians, and Georgians. I won't go into all the reasons they didn't like Bate, but needless to say, that's just another strike against them. The Tennesseans at the top were under this Benton Smith. As soon as the sun comes up, they're under artillery fire. There's artillery over here firing toward us. There's artillery off that way firing this way. And as the day wears on, the U.S. Cavalry's managed to get artillery back in the rear. So they said the shells are crossing each other all day long. All they could do is just kind of hunker down and take it. And again, they see their wagon trains have moved out, and they know U.S. troops are behind them. On some of this high ground, this ridge back here, they said they could see some U.S. troops watching them throughout the day, just observing them, just standing up there watching them. So this is pretty hopeless. When the battle started, the Confederates controlled every turnpike on this side of the river, from Charlotte, Harding, Hillsborough, Granny White, Franklin, Nolensville, and on out to Murfreesboro and even Lebanon Pike. Their line originally stretched across every single turnpike. Now at this time, at this late afternoon hour on the 16th, they've only got one road they still control, and that's Franklin Pike. So when they retreat before the end of the day, every soldier is going to have to figure out some way before the end of the day to get on Franklin Pike to ever get out of here. The Floridians broke first, and I got a Major Lash, who had been commanding them the first day. There was another major that covered them on the second day, and I haven't found a picture of him. His name was Glover Ball. He's from Connecticut. Another one of these strange things were these people that had just moved down south, and a lot of them hadn't been here long, and they adhered to the Confederacy. General Strahl, we mentioned him down there. He'd come down from Ohio just about 2 years before the war. He was an attorney. He adhered to the Confederacy. There's a General Reynolds who's going to help cover the withdrawal. He was down from Ohio just a couple of years. He adhered to the Confederacy. I think what happened is the Floridians being on the slope, I think when they broke, that enabled to a large extent the U.S. troops to move up the way we just walked up. I think traditionally what I thought and what most people thought is the attacks really coming straight up. And I believe there were troops that were coming straight up. They were actually coming up without orders. They were under a General MacArthur, not related to the general of the 20th century. But he got tired of waiting. It was about 4 o'clock, and again, they're running out of daylight. I think it would have been better if they just canceled the attack and figured Hood was still going to be here the next morning. He can hardly get out of here. He's almost totally surrounded. MacArthur's just impatient. The general in command, Thomas, is over here talking to General Schofield, and Schofield is so uptight, he thinks his flank is in danger. Nothing of the sort, not at all. But he's reluctant to attack, and he's asking to be reinforced before he moves forward. So you've still got 10,000 plus troops in out here that never make this attack. They're in position to attack, and they never even move in. Just these that come in without orders are going to actually make the attack and break the line. The troops behind us are never really engaged. They just see this hill break. They know that they're virtually surrounded, and they start running. That was some of Strahl's brigade. Colonel Keller, who was in command, said it wasn't force of arms that caused them to leave their position. Off in the distance beyond them, the Confederates are still fighting to hold on to the rear, which they did successfully. Reynolds and another general from Tennessee, Manny's old brigade under Colonel Watkins, and Ector's brigade had been moved down there. They had been taken off the hill. They were moved back there. So they're still holding the rear. Radnor Lake wasn't there at the time. Radnor Lake's just behind that ridge. Radnor Lake was built around 1905 approximately to furnish water for the steam engines at Radnor Yard, which is right there. And so there was a country road that went through where Radnor Lake is. And that's how most of these troops that are in this area are going to escape, by going across this country road. And Reynolds is the one from Ohio who's got these Arkansas troops, is going to hold that road until everybody who's trying to get through gets through on that road. Just amazing final stand. Further over on Franklin Pike, they don't even quite know what's happened because they've successfully defeated the colored troops. They don't quite understand what's going on, but they start to see troops retreating. There's going to be a Louisiana brigade that will make a stand out about 10 in Franklin Pike. And the other one we talked about earlier, the Battle of the Barricade, is out Granny White. So Chalmers, the cavalry general who'd come all the way through Bellevue, had finally gotten the orders earlier in the day to watch out for the wagon train that was at Maryland Farms and make sure he protected it, which he did. And once he saw it was secure, he came this way on Granny White. So now we've got Yankees behind us, and the Yankees behind us have got Confederates behind them. So when Shies Hill falls, if Chalmers hadn't been there, this Yankee cavalry could have mounted up, gone out Granny White, and you know where Granny White goes? It goes to Franklin Pike. They'd have gone out Granny White, and they could have cut off the Confederate army. For the only time in the war in a major battle, it was conceivable they could have bagged an entire army if it hadn't been for Chalmers out there, who I'd say all three stands were miraculous, but I'd have to say probably the one the Confederate cavalry made was the most important. And it has been memorialized as the Battle of a Barricade because they had a barricade across the road. There's even a subdivision out there where they used a raised relief to show this saber duel between a colonel, a Confederate colonel, and supposedly a Yankee colonel. He's actually a captain. That took place about dark. This man, Colonel Rucker, was from Murfreesboro originally, and they had to amputate his arm. He took a pretty bad hit. Rucker later in the war was one of the big industrialists. So many people from Nashville started the city of Birmingham, and he was one of the big shakers and movers in forming Birmingham, Alabama. But he was captured, but this stand had really saved the army. The Yankee general named Wilson said that they fought until